I'm calling to order the special meeting of the Playground Working Group, Thursday, November 9th, 2023. It is 8:47 a.m. The first item on the agenda is to vote on the minutes of August 31st, September 28th, October 19th, October 26th, and we decided not to do November 2nd. That'll be at the next meeting. Do we have any changes? I know Ruth was kind enough to mention that she wasn't at one of the meetings, so that was a good change, obviously. But is there any other changes that people have that we just keep in mind that these are just we're keeping the minutes, especially for broad, like kind of ideas on that. If people want to go back and look at all our meetings are pretty much recorded, as you know, and they're available on TV 79 if anybody ever wants to watch themselves speak about this subject again.
Which I don't.
Which I don't either. I was like horrified. I like every time I watch myself on video, I'm like, why am I volunteering?
Okay.
Anyway, I need a makeup artist and a hairdresser. But anyway, that's not the point. Is there anything that anybody wants to make changes to so that we can move on to the meat of our meeting, which is choosing our playground? Looks like everybody's pretty good with them. So can I have a motion to approve the minutes with the revision that Ruth already submitted online about not being at a meeting for August 31st, September 28th, October 19th, and October 26th? Can we have a motion for that? Anybody?
Motion.
Alyssa, and then second, Ruth or Pat, Ruth. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Looks like it was unanimous. Pam, you got that, right? So going into the next part, which is to discuss and finalize creative recreations designs, I just wanted to say just a couple of quick words. First, I want to thank everybody for your feedback and participation in the process. Our goal was always to engage you guys in the process and be our eyes and ears and talk to your friends, have your kids try out the playground and tell us what you know. And I feel like we've been doing that, and I really appreciate that. And now we're just have to get to the point where we're creating the playgrounds that are appropriate to given your feedback too. I also want to do a special shout out to everyone that actually drove up to Orange to see the Fred Wolf playground, because as you know, between battling 95 and all the rain, it was not an easy visit. So I really appreciate that. The other thing I want to say is I want to thank Pam and John. I mean, honestly, they've been kind of flipping all these revisions and really making it easier for us as a committee to look at different options. I mean, there's been so many. If you look at it, look at the Google Doc. I mean, that thing's almost 100 pages long. So that tells you a lot about what's been going on. So I want to really thank them for doing that. Also, like today, we're definitely going to have to figure out the structure because we have a timeline that we'll talk about later in the meeting that we want to get to in order to get this playground built and enjoyed by our members. But the other thing I want to talk to you guys about is that to keep a couple of things in mind that I know you guys are kind of like you're come from a different space. Like you might have younger children, you might be empty nesters, you might have older children, you might have different needs, but just to keep in mind that as a commission, when we build things and do things, we have to look at the requirements of all the community, not just different subgroups. So just when we consider how we plan to present it to the commission, that's what we need to think about. And that we're building things for the future, and to realize that, we want to have amenities for the future for these young kids that are young now. So these are things I'd keep in mind. I mean, I feel like we've done a great job serving, like looking at ways to make our playgrounds more ADA. I hope Curtis hopes that. But let's keep on going with it and know that there are people in our community that we might not be serving because of what we have there. It's not that they don't need it. It's just that it's not there. So anyway, I'm going to open it up. I know Ruth had to go at 9:30. So do you want to start, Ruth? I'm okay with that.
Sure. What am I starting with? I mean, I have a list of things I can talk about, but I just don't.
I guess what I was trying to do was focus on, I feel like we have the most work to do in the 5 to 12 area. The 2 to 5, I feel like we have some tweaks, and if we don't get to them today, it's not a big deal. Like we could fix those tweaks. And what I should say is that we're having a commission meeting on next Wednesday. So I want to get to them what we're thinking about, especially conceptually. We don't have to say this is going to be the exact slide, this is the exact swing, but I want them to see kind of like the broad strokes of where we're going, or where we are, I should say. So if we could focus on 5 to 12, that would be really helpful, because now we have two designs that, well, really two. The third design, which was the really cool custom design, which we all were like, wow, this is awesome, was kind of out of our price range. So the feedback on the 5 to 12 would be really helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Just to kind of go over I love that, I went through all the minutes. My husband was making fun of me. My big thing is I agree. I love the 2 to 5. I think we were told that we had to stick with the same vendor for both 2 to 5 and then the 5 to 12. Um, my my biggest concern is that the 5 to 12, I love it on paper. I think he checked every box that we asked for. Until I went to that playground with my son and saw it in firsthand, I didn't realize the extremeness of it and the size of it. And my concern is that it's really big for the population. And so that's my concern is it's a little it's just everything's extreme. And without, but I do think he met everything we asked for. I love the climbers. I love all the things he added. But my number one concern was when I saw it in person, I know that the 4 to 8-year-olds are the ones that are primarily going to be using this playground. And I just feel like it's a very large structure in person. On paper, it looks beautiful. But I feel like when you're there live, it's a lot. And then the last thing that I'll kind of chime in on, which I think is important for the group to know as we're talking about the population, is that come September 1st, there will be more preschoolers looking for playgrounds during the school hours because of the new change in age. And so I think that's something for us to keep in mind, that the older kids can use their elementary school playgrounds after school hours, but those kids cannot. So we're going to have more kids looking for a playground, and the noon to 3 o'clock is the busiest time for a playground. And so I just want us to keep in mind that we're going to have a lot more little guys using these equipment. So that's kind of personal. So I think if you're looking for me to say, where do I feel on this playground structure? I agree that the mega tower that he reset, the design, it doesn't include a lot of those things that we asked him to include. So I get it. There's not a lot. It just slides. It's not that wow factor. But my biggest concern is just that what we're putting in with this mega extreme it's hard for the population, and I also when we think about population, I spoke to people who were there on the weekends with dogs and with different generations of people using the space. And they love, I keep hearing this, everyone loves what's there now. And they're like, why are you changing it? We love it. We love it. We love it. And even my son, I asked him which one he liked better. He said, I like the current cherry lawn better than what we saw. Again, he's 4.5, just to put out there in the record. He's not the 5 to 12. He's 4.5-year-old.
Okay.
So
that's great feedback, Ruth. And as you know, like at least 6 of us went up there too. So it's good to have all the different feedback. And would you then, just to get would you go with the mega tower with revisions? If, is that your inclination right now? Just to get your feedback. Does that make sense? I mean, obviously it doesn't have to be the way it looks exactly right now, but if there were revisions to the mega tower, would you be okay with it?
Yeah. The reason I'm hesitant is because I liked that he took out like that moon climbing structure. I don't remember what it's called, the physics, like that.
Yeah, the physics. Yeah, it's just that it doesn't fit in that. But
yeah,
you
and
can
so
also
because
talk to him about fixing that. If that's what you decide that you would like to see. I'm just not sure how it would fit in the budget with that, because I think that the X Gen, one of the things people don't realize is that, from what I'm learning, the structure itself was not as expensive as the mega tower, because the mega tower is filled with a lot of platforms and metal pieces that cost more, just as a materials point of view. So we might not be able to get that. So that's what I'm saying. And that's, so would you then still stay with the mega tower? And maybe some revisions, maybe a ninja wall we talked about. We got pricing on that too. I don't know if you noticed. I still need a picture though. But we did get pricing on having another amenity on the ground.
Got it. Yeah, I didn't see, I tried to look for all that and I didn't see that revision.
Yeah,
But I feel, if I have to pick between the two,
right.
um, I would lean towards modified mega tower because
Okay,
I think it would give us more opportunities to
okay,
address the younger needs.
okay. I'm gonna get Curtis on because he also has a time that he needs to run. So Curtis, if you don't mind jumping in right now, this is your time to speak. Are you there still? Did I lose him?
Yeah, he might have jumped off for a call or something. He's going to be on till 9:30. He did
Yeah, okay,
email.
so we could if someone else wants to come
Here.
in right now.
Yep, there he
Oh,
is.
here he is. Curtis is here. Sorry, guys, go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you very much. Yes, and I apologize for having to drop off on the early side today.
No, it's perfect.
So it is fantastic to hear all the different feedback, and as everyone has mentioned, everyone's different perspectives and representing kids of different age groups. I tend to see it more the way I understood John to see it, which is if we're building a playground for the next 20 years, two things. Number one, I think it needs to be new and exciting and different looking. So I tend to go more towards the X Gen because of its design, because how interesting it is to young eyes, rather than I think the other design I think is more old looking to me, and maybe grown-ups trying to fit it into the environment more, which is not a consideration that children have. And I think we have an opportunity in this park, which is unlike any other park we have in town. We have the space. We don't have houses next to it. We have very tall trees around. It is tucked up there in a corner. I think it's the ideal location for something new and different. I don't have any concerns about the height of the X Gen of either structure, particularly when John said we could drop it by 4 feet. So I don't think that's an issue whatsoever. But when I look at the videos of Pam, I think it was your children, your son climbing up inside the X Gen, climbing up the wall, which is intended for the older kids. That's exactly what I think we want to do to bring the older kids to the playground. We want to challenge them. That double helix climber, that a kid walks by, I wrote this in the notes, a child walks by and they say, wow, that's different. I'm going to try that, right? So I think that's what we want to go for, especially, they've had traditional playgrounds. They have traditional playgrounds. I think we want to go for something non-traditional. And we want to go, I do have a different opinion about what age group we want to target in that 5 to 12. I think we want to bring the 8, 9, and 10-year-olds in, and maybe even push that a little higher with something interesting and challenging. If we start, we have a 2 to 5 playground. If we start adding elements in the 5 to 12 that are meant to cater toward the younger children, we're going to lose the older age group. So I think that's, again, we have 2 playgrounds on that same location for that reason. And again, this was my understanding. John said the X-Gen is much more forward-looking design and more challenging. And I think we have the ideal space for it. It can handle the height with 80-foot trees around. And I think exciting and different is exactly what we need for that older age group. To the point that Susan made at the outset, this is for all the kids in town. We don't want to just make our playgrounds for just the little kids. And I have no extra comments on the accessibility. I think this group has done an amazing job to try to incorporate that, and I'm super happy about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Curtis. That's really helpful. Who would like to speak next in the group? Alyssa? Okay, you got to unmute. Okay.
No, sorry about that. Yeah, I can talk. I'm very, very torn on this. I'm having a lot of trouble coming up with, and it's terrible because I feel like a flip-flopper, but I just want to be really candid that I agree very much with what Curtis just said, and that the idea of something new, we don't want a playground that looks like all the other playgrounds because of the fact that we're looking for longevity. We're looking for something that's going to be new and exciting and appealing. But I'm also hesitant because I know what this town is like, and I know the kind of backlash that we get over very minor things. So it's one of those where, I want something exciting and new, but at the same time, I also don't want to do it at the, and run the risk of creating some kind of an uproar, since the park is being used for such multiple purposes. I'm not a big fan of the mega tower. I feel like it's rather boring, and it doesn't offer much. We'd have to dive deeper into what other elements can be added to it. But the way that it's proposed now, it just seems, it has even less to offer. We had talked about the mega tower, we had talked about the X Gen and how it's kind of just an up and across and down. But I think the mega tower doesn't offer anything more than that. So I'm not concerned about the little kids. When we were in Orange, there were primarily a lot of families. Maybe it was just the timing of when we were there, because it was kind of like when all the bigger kids were doing their sports. And there were a lot of almost entirely families there with young children, and no one seemed concerned. So I feel like even the X Gen would be okay if we're looking at a lot of small kids being there, but it's good for the big kids as well. So yeah, I unfortunately I can't come up with a definitive feeling, because I'm so torn. I love the idea of this new exciting thing, but at the same time, I also don't want, something that's going to, shock in a bad way. We want to shock in a good way. We just don't want to shock in a bad way.
I want to speak to that real quick, Alyssa. I'm a veteran of many projects in town, including Playground by the Sound, Wheat Beach, and I've done a lot of unpopular things in town, trust me. And change is one of those things. It's kind of hard, right? When you want to do something kind of really dramatic. I mean, you look at what's going on with commercial development, housing development in town. There have been big changes. Whole Foods was a huge controversy. My playground that we did, that Playground by the Sound, was we had so much negative feedback from it from the beginning, before we built it, during, after. And I just think that initially there is that reaction, because you're making a change, and there are people that are currently using the playground that might feel like it's too different, and they're going to be uncomfortable. But I also feel like that's when we grow, and people do use this playground that is in Orange is not dangerous. I mean, honestly, the whole thing's caged in, so the safety would be a huge thing for me personally. So I don't want you to fear like this backlash. I mean, I've experienced it personally many times myself, and come on the other side and seeing people come to me and say, wow, I'm so glad you did that. That was the most awesome thing. So there's always going to be someone that doesn't like what you do. That's kind of being in the public eye. Like, you see it in social media, you see it in all these things. But I think what I'm trying to get from you is what you feel like, if you didn't have to worry about what other people think, and taking away that it's not a safety issue, how would you feel? Like, it sounds like you enjoyed it, and that's good to hear.
Right. We definitely, the kids really enjoyed it. It didn't keep their attention for quite as long as I had hoped for. So that was a little concerning when we were there, but but it was also the case that I find that happens with my kids at a lot of playgrounds when there aren't a ton of other kids around who are their age. So that tends to happen. So at Cherry Lawn, there's always, there always tends to be other kids there. But we had, like my almost 8-year-old, had, he started to get a little bored after a while, but it could have been the fact that it wasn't the kids. I think if we can look at all of the side thing, all of those elements that are around it, and ensure that we bulk that up as much as possible with the different climbing structures. If we look at something perhaps alternative to the handcuffs, if we make sure that we look at monkey bars, if we add a lot of little bells and whistles to those sides, I think that we could make that into something that would be really usable. And then the kids, so even when I found at the park when we were up in Orange, because there were other things that were happening, that big tower wasn't something that every kid had to be in all the time. Because I know we were a little concerned about the idea of congestion, but I think if we bulk up everything around it and we can make a lot of different elements that will attract a lot of different attention, then we could make it usable. And also if we can incorporate a color scheme that would be, I know that, and Curtis had had great comments about the color and the brightness and things, but I think that, keeping it a little bit more on the neutral side and not having it be this giant structure with this like bright colors and all these, might make it, just a little bit easier on the eyes for, for everyone.
Okay, this is great feedback. And I think that, it sounds like you could do the X-Gen. I don't want to put words in your mouth, just,
No, I could do the
but
X-Gen.
you don't want the mega tower as described now.
I don't like the mega tower. I feel
Okay.
like the mega tower is rather boring.
Okay.
And it does look so much like McGuan, and it looks like every other playground. So I'm not feeling excited about the mega tower. Perhaps if he was able to give us some, something around it that would make it a little more, because it does just seem like you climb up and go down slides. It doesn't seem to offer very much.
Right. In terms of like that surprise thing about dealing with like people to change, I think with this playground more than you probably could have worked with McGuan to extent is just really socializing it while we're in the process of like ordering it and before installing it. I think people knowing what's coming and having a preview versus coming one day and saying my playground is totally not the same. I think
Right.
that might help like people like putting the video of kids playing on the similar structure that this is something like what you're going to get. I mean, normally I'm like, let's wow them. But in this case, because it's such a big change, I
Right.
think as a committee, we could look for ways to kind of socialize it, get some coverage on it, maybe if we decide to go this way. I'm not, saying the decision's done.
Yeah.
But anyway,
And I agree. And I agree there's ways. I'm not as familiar with all of the ins and outs of kind of, working with the opinions of the town. But I think I really feel like I don't like the mega tower, unless they were to create it into something else. And the X Gen, I feel like as long as we made sure there was a lot of other things around it, then I think it could work.
Okay, that's great feedback.
Yeah.
Why don't we get another person that wants to weigh in? Anybody? Do you want
Is
Jean?
it
You want to talk?
possible?
Got you.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we
Hi.
can.
Hi.
So I 100% agree with everything that Alyssa has said so far. I think, obviously I'm jumping very late on the project. I've reviewed as many of the proposals and the renderings as possible. I agree. I'm blanking on the name of not the X Gen, the other one, the Mega Tower.
Mega Tower.
I agree that the mega tower does not seem like a worthwhile enough change. We were going to invest in something that doesn't feel different enough. It doesn't feel like a wow factor enough. I think people will be happy that there's new structures, but I don't think it would make a change in who we're trying to attract to the community and things like that. So there's definitely elements of the X Gen that are exciting to me. And I think that so long as we do try to meet in the middle with the height, I do know that that's a huge concern. I think that could definitely be a nice meet in the middle. I have very few friends that have older kids, but the ones that do, I know that the things that they love to do, they're older, they're 10-year-old boys. I know that they love to do like the ninja parkour. That's the stuff that keeps them excited, but they have to go to other places, not playgrounds right now, that cost money. So they'll go to Stanford. There's like a rock climbing place in Stanford that they go to. They'll go to Chelsea Piers. There's some sort of parkour place that they go to. So I think having a free option is also such a great thing for this community. We're going to have a very much more blended community now, I feel too, with all of the new construction that's happening and the new families that are coming in. It's not all the same people with the same financial status, I feel, in our town. And so I think that having that free option is so important. And I think just so long as we do make it feel, I remember when I met with you were like, it looks like Game of Thrones. And I'm like, that honestly this scares me. I think if we make it feel a little bit more inviting, from a coloration perspective and from that height perspective, if we could bring it down just a notch, I think that it could be really exciting. That so long as we have other options for the kids surrounding it, so they don't feel that's the only thing that they have to captivate their attention, I think it could be a really interesting feature that no other town near us has at the moment. So that's my 2 cents
That's great.
about that.
Appreciate that,
That was
Jean. And I
helpful.
want everybody to know that Jean's actually in the fashion business. She's an amazing artist. I've seen some of her work. She's got beautiful color. So if we have someone in the community that can help with color, this is our person. So thanks for joining. Even though late, we still need your help. Thank you
Thank
for
you
your
so
feedback.
much.
And I like that you understand that even though you have, you know, your daughter's what, 4.5 or something, that you are also looking to the future and
Yeah.
also the needs of boys and that climbing and that need to do all of that. That's something to think about, because I think that's the generation that that's the group of people that we need to get back into the parks. So thank you so much, Jean. Really appreciate
Well, it's
that.
funny because one of our babysitters, she, of course, and just like one of our babysitters, she watches kids that are at this age 12. And I was asking her, I was like, those kids go to the playtime anymore? And she was saying they go there, but they just go and stand around. Like they're not actually doing anything. So the more we can encourage them to not just loiter, I think would be great.
Yeah. Okay, that's great, Jean. Anyone else want to jump in now for feedback? Okay, Sarah, anything?
Yeah, no, I have lots to
Sorry
say.
to call you out.
I have lots to say.
Okay, well, good. And we'll listen.
I'm definitely glad I listened. I think Curtis, I'd only heard half of Ruth, so I'm not sure what Ruth said. Apologies, I had a screaming child. But lots of things that Curtis said, spot on. I don't know if other Pam talked, and also Alyssa, who I don't see anymore, but really good points. I went up on Saturday and I really wanted to love it. Like I was hoping that it would just make me so excited, and it did the complete opposite. Like my 8-year-old was like, yeah, I'd rather keep the cherry lawn one. And so I think that kind of spoke to me. And he's by no means he's not a 12-year-old. He's not the kid that's doing sports. He's, happy in his Lego world. So, but he was like, yeah, all you do is go up and across and back and down. He's like, after that, like, what is there to do? And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. I'm definitely not worried about the safety part. For me personally, my 3-year-olds were up there. So that also kind of what tells me is that, like, if a 3-year-old can do it, how challenging is this for a 12-year-old? Like, I know that's our target, but like my 3-year-old was going across. So, and again, I liked it for certain things. I really did. There is a wow factor. I think it's cool. I think as a kid, I probably would have really liked it. I think there's going to be so many kids who will like it. I'm not naysaying that part. I think I'm still holding my ground that I feel like we're putting all of our eggs on this one. Like Alyssa, I think, then hit the nail on the head. If we were to able to add more little things, like what Ruth said with the climbing uppy thingy, whatever that's called, the ramp thing that, the older kids can definitely do. My 3-year-old can't do that, I think that'll excite the older kids, the challenge. But I'm not as worried. I think, Susan, again, you said it really well, that we're always going to upset people. There's always going to be people who get disappointed about change. I totally get that. I remember I was on RTM when Highland Farms was a huge, everyone, and I love Highland Farms. I go there all the time. But that's because it works for me. I get why people are whatever, upset about it. But so that part's not my concern. Definitely the height coming down. I think that's also key. If that's a possibility. I'm definitely anti-color. I'm definitely very much like as neutral as humanly possible if we went with it. I still feel like if there is a way to make the playground space actually larger, again, if we were to take some money from Baker, I don't think Baker needs $175,000 to do what they have for their square footage. I just don't. And if we could make the space bigger so we could actually buy some other pieces that are standalone, that makes me feel slightly better about the Gen X, whatever the heck it's called. again, am I like so excited? I'm not. Like, I kind of feel like, I kind of just feel like we're just, I don't know. It's like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's got the wow factor, but then how long is the wow factor going to last? And I will also say it was not cherry lawn packed, and there is a queue going up that ladder. We had to wait, and it wasn't even that busy. You have to wait going up that ladder. And I tried to see if like Dave could go up, and he is by no means even he is not a big guy. Like, we are not large people, and he couldn't go up with one of my kids. He had to help the one up, and then he had to go up behind them. So it's going to get crowded. Like, so that there has to be other stuff for those kids to do who are like not willing on the non-busy days. I think it's going to be fine. But like when you get those packed moments, I like, and I was just with a friend the other day, and she was saying how her son now plays baseball. So she's at McGuan, and she said it was packed. And I was like, oh, that playground gets busy? Like, I have no clue. I know I don't go there. So it was just interesting to see. And that's a small playground. Like, and she said it was packed over there because it's baseball season. Or I don't, is it baseball season? Is it?
Yeah,
I don't even know.
There's always a season.
Yeah.
This is
So,
great feedback, by the way.
I just,
you sound like you're kind of like,
I'm not excited about either.
Neither there.
I would be picking something totally different out of the catalog. Like, I'd be honestly, if it was between John and I, and he was like my architect, I'd be like, you got to scrap, and we're starting all over again. Like, you just did not do it for me. I mean, I guess,
you know, it's also budget considerations. Like, he chose a design that fit within our budget also.
True. So, but I think what I also
awesome.
feel like
and
with
even
John,
the other item that you guys picked, which was great, that's $500,000 without. That's just,
well, that's a custom. Like, if you looked at it, it has like this whole design on it where it like looks like it's a shack or something. Like, I don't think we were asking for that exact design. We were saying to John, can you give us two things to go across? And he didn't give us anything like that. So love John, but like, again, I don't feel like we're pushing him enough from like a challenging perspective. Like, because what I would have said to him is, when we first gave you our budget and you had our playground area, the first thing he gave us wasn't the Gen X. Why didn't he give us that for the first time? If he's so in love with it, because, and he thinks it's so great,
I think,
why
Sarah,
did he give us the boring one?
I'll answer that question, which is a good question, by the way. He gave us what he gave us was within our budget. And then we said to him, here, we're not interested in your design because you're doing McGuan 2.0. And so Pam went back to him and said, the things that the committee's looking at are novel, interesting, different things. Remember, we really like the Emmy O'Brien that looks like this, I don't know, real interesting structure that was a climbing structure. We wanted something different. So then we went back and challenged him to pivot, you know, and he wanted to keep our business, I guess. So he came up with the second design. So that's why there's such a departure. But Sarah, I need to get a couple of more people. I think, you know, I see where you're going with and I think everybody hears it. So I'm going to get Patty and Pam, the two P's left that haven't spoken.
Kathy.
I don't want to lose people and not have them hear their thoughts. So Patty, or do you want to speak first, or Patty Baumgartner? What did you say? No? Pam Garrity. There you go, Pam Garrity. Can you speak?
Hi, good morning. Thanks for everybody's feedback. I went back a second time with my kids, and it was a gorgeous sunny day. They have been asking every day to go back to Orange, and they're having a ton of fun. Just to remind everybody, my kids I have a 9-year-old, I have two 10-year-olds, and a 13-year-old. And so for my 9 and 10-year-olds, they have found the most wacky and creative ways to make that playground very exciting for themselves. They do a lot of like fear factor stunts that they, you know, like their own little version of parkour, I guess. But so when I was there on a rainy day. We were the only ones there. I was there on a gorgeous day, and it was us and like every toddler. Which it could, because it was during the school day. My children are homeschooled. There were 2-year-olds. There was a 2-year-old that went up and could do everything. I was shocked. The 2-year-old, and then of course I was very creepy asking every caretaker everything. And there were 2- and 4-year-olds going through the handcuffs, which to me, my knee-jerk reaction for those big round handcuff looking things was, let's replace that. That looks ridiculous. but I take it all back because I watched little kids do it. I watched my kids do it. Everybody was doing it in different ways. So what I noticed was that the bottom half, there were little kids that could do everything, and there were little kids that couldn't do anything, but they could all do stuff on the lower ends. Because in my opinion, the bottom has a lot of activities. It has a bunch of littler slides. It has tons of that cool climbing thing that has other climbing things. And that actually was very appealing to me, that it wasn't just two towers. In my opinion, it had a lot of action on the bottom. So that didn't bother me. I'm all for it. I think it's fun. I think if you build it, they will come. You got to give these kids something exciting. And, 6-year-olds become 8-year-olds, 8-year-olds become 10-year-olds. And it's true that the more kids, the merrier. We are a full group where we just travel alone. And so my kids are always entertained with each other because there's so many of them. So I think it's great. And you know what I was thinking? Another thing is, if you wanted to do this more of like a soft and not so much of a shock, like boom, here's this huge tower. You ever see those apartment buildings and they have like, as they're being constructed, there's like a picture on the banner that's like tacked to the fence, maybe something like that. And so they can see what's coming. I'm happy to use Moms of Darien in any way that can help, of course.
We did that with Milan too, Pam. We had a picture of what was to come. And I think that was really helpful. And I just want to add too, just to remind people, when we've been talking for the last 6, 7, 8 months, it also has been very important to keep running space. So I love the fact that there is not another deck below the top deck, because kids are going to be running underneath it and around. And I think that we can find other elements within our space. But I also think it's kind of cool that the kids can have.
I like that too, and I had concerns about that, but which have of course been squashed the more that I've seen my kids interact with this apparatus. My kids were using their watches, and they were doing, because it's so high up, they were doing like this throwing game of who could catch and who could like reach down and catch. So there's so many creative ways. My 10-year-old son was actually able to almost monkey bar across it. And it is 10 feet high. And every time he dropped, it was no big deal. And of course I was like, careful, but it wasn't a big deal. He did say that the holes, so this, I'm talking about the floor of the bridge. So he was under it. He was able to climb up, like illegally climb up and hang from it. And he said the holes are so small, like where your foot would fall through. He said those were so small for his hand, it was too hard for his hand to grip. So he couldn't really monkey bar. He could grab, he was trying to get to like the main brackets. And so he was able to do it a little, but he said the holes were too small for him to really use them in that capacity.
Okay, so that's definitely an off-label use, and we've seen that at parks. So
yes,
I wouldn't advertise that.
I also asked him.
But I'm glad that he found YouTube. Yeah.
I also asked him to try to climb up the slide, the tube slide, to see how far he could go. And he was able to go a little bit. He said he didn't want to go any higher on the tube slide, and even though I think he probably could have, but he didn't want to. So yeah, it's definitely doable to go up the outside of a tube slide. We all know that.
Cool. This is great feedback. And if anybody doesn't know, Pam is the moderator of Moms of Darien, which has 6,000 members, and she reaches a huge audience in this local area. So she's a great resource for getting the word out about communicating with our community, because it's probably, I got to tell you, I see a lot of things. One of the most effective ways that people are really learning about things and opportunities, which thank you, Pam, for moderating that and for your feedback. Patty Baumgartner, do you want to speak, or I think you're the only person that hasn't had a chance.
Kathy.
Oh, Kathy. Yeah. I was going to let her go last because she's on the commission, because she's been definitely she's been sitting back and listening to the feedback, which is very appreciated, and formulating her own opinions, which is great. Patty B, you ready?
Sure. Just want to thank everybody for their feedback. I agree with a lot of what a lot of people said. Curtis gave me pause when he talked about the color and children being drawn to color. It really made me think, it feels more natural to do a more natural thing within the landscape of kind of the trees at Cherry Lawn, but it gave me pause to think about it. I also recognize that we chose to do color and matching color at McGuan. We took our time. Remember, we were going to do like grays, and we said, I was one who said, let's go back and revisit it and let's do some yellows and blues to match what was there. So I think, those are things to consider. I do want to thank everybody who made it up. I was the first one who made it up only because I had a stomach ache before the meeting when none of us had seen it yet. And, we had first heard about it 2 months ago on August, I think it was the August 31st, I think that meeting was. I remember because I was at a wedding weekend, but I took the time to do the meeting, but I couldn't get on. And so as a result, I couldn't see. I don't know if he showed a video, but I wasn't able to see things at that point. So it was very clarifying for me to go up there, see it. As you know, if you go on the Google Docs, I put all photos and videos. Thanks for helping to post those, Susan, of me climbing through those. So I defer to the parents on the climbing apparatus, the spins. The feedback throughout this whole process has been swings, slides, climbers. That's the theme that I keep seeing. I went back and read all the minutes, all the Google Doc last night just to refresh. So I'm just going to tell you that, the mega tower, I felt like we just got it. It was a cut and paste, and then it was missing all the stuff on the bottom. So I felt like I like him, but he just cut and paste that to get us something. The Extreme Gen, I love all the stuff on the bottom. If you go through the Google Docs, you'll see I detailed all my comments on things that I thought were terrific, including single standing music items that would be great for the ADA area, slide swings, things like that. I love the climbing apparatus that he proposed. I think that's really key to have that separate climbing one, the Phoenix or whatever it's called, to the side. That is important. The swings are important. Having the ADA swings and some port and play there, connecting with the brick fundraiser that we're talking about is all important. I definitely have concerns on height. I've sent videos of kids climbing through. I'm not concerned of their safety inside it. It's not a safety thing. It's just that it's so big. Okay. So I'm going to just give you my points real quick because I know we're running out of time. My concerns are it's just really, really big for the physical landscape, which is why I had asked if he could come back with something shorter. I didn't mean a whole new design necessarily. I just meant if there's a way to do it, whether we pick it out of the catalog or do different items, because I like a lot of items on there, but I'm feeling like we're forced to choose this, and we're not there yet. So that's my honest answer. So again, kind of too high for the landscape of everything that goes on at that park. We have to consider everybody goes there. Overwhelming the footprint in the landscape. Again, do multiple items. I think that's important to do. I want to reemphasize that this does not have to be encumbered, which means committed to, until December 2024 and completed till December 2026. So you guys know me, like I'm all on board for everything, right? But we need to do it right. And so I just want to give you that timeline for that. And I think it's more important to take our time and really do it right and get feedback from the families, from end users. So what my proposal would be is that we do a Parks and Rec survey, and we put a survey out there with questions to our community, which is big, and that we do a survey that we also fill out. We have people fill out, nannies, parents, grandparents, on the playground to get their feedback as well, and really, really analyze it. Because I think we're all trying to get to the same goal of delivering something positive, right? I do strongly feel from observing every single day there that the younger kids' playground is more 18 months to 3, and the older kids' playground is more, 4 to 8. I'm not saying I don't want older kids there. I think the ninja item is awesome. I see it every Tuesday at Cherry Lawn when Pam has that programming. I think that's wonderful. So I did see the photo of that and the description. So if we could do some more of those separate items, and if there's a way to just get that extreme, a similar thing to an extreme, but just smaller, that really has all of the things on the bottom that are still challenging to all different ages. Because remember, even the DNA thing that we talked about, that was more challenging for older kids than versus the younger kids. So, what I'm hearing from several of the moms is that once the kids go up, they do it a few times and then they're bored. So that they'd
Okay,
rather
Patty.
have a lot of items that they could do down below. So that's my proposal.
Thank you very much, Patty. Really appreciate that. Kathy, do you want to chime in real quick, or
Sure. I think Ruth wanted to say something though.
are you okay? Ruth, do you want to jump in? Sorry, I didn't see that.
No, I'm trying to make it so I can take it from the car. No, you're good. I'm just changing.
Okay,
my
okay,
Wi-Fi.
thank you. Okay, sorry. Okay, thank you.
Totally understand. So I'm taking it from a commission point of view. I don't have kids the age would use the park right now. So I appreciate everyone's insight who went to the park with kids and had them try it out. I think that is like the best feedback we could possibly get, because the kids are going to be ones using it. Patty, I know we survey a lot and we get a lot of great information through surveying, but I think we're beyond that. I think the better feedback is really from this group right now. And that's why we set it up this way, is to have people with kids who are using the parks to give us that feedback. I think the survey, while it does give you some feedback, it's can be muted. I'm a marketing attorney by background. I deal with surveys every day. It doesn't, you get about a 1% response or up to 3%. And a lot of time the response isn't necessarily indicative of the whole population, but I do think the people who've given their time here can give us better feedback. The biggest issues is we really want it to be fun and we want the kids to like it. And that's the feedback we've heard. So I think we have to think about how to do that. And it sounds like the current design doesn't quite get us there. And I think there's a lot of discussion about color and muting and all of that, and we still have decisions to make. Those are decisions we can make once we settle on the design, but it sounds like to me that we haven't settled on a design. It sounds like we still have work to do in order to meet the needs of the community in our most used park. So when my son was young, that was the park I went to. It's what I take people who come visit me who have little kids, I take them there. It's our most used park. So I agree that we just haven't quite gotten there yet, but we're a lot closer than when we started. And there's a lot of hard work that's been going into this, but I think it sounds like we still have some work to do to get to that design where everyone feels like this is the right one to go forward. That's what I'm hearing. I do think that it's a balance. We also have a budget and we have to live within that budget. I know people think Baker isn't used a lot. I think the goal is to trying to get it to be used more.
No, I wasn't saying Baker isn't used a lot. I was just saying I know what you can get for 175,000, and I don't think Baker needs all of it. That's all I was saying. I think Baker.
150. It's 150.
It's 150. Sorry, 150. Yeah. Again,
Yeah.
I know what Patty said that
it's pretty run down.
Oh no, I mean you can still gut it, but like I said, I know what Ox looks like, and that if that only cost them 105,
Right.
it's way bigger than what the footprint for Baker. I'm not saying like I was not saying that Baker doesn't get used.
I'm not gonna start talking about taking money away from Baker just yet, because
That's
we
fine.
just
I just
know, and I don't. That's going to be our last project, and they shouldn't be shortchanged because we have runoffs on another project. I think $500,000 for Cherry Lawn right now is good, and especially when you factor in that we're going to be doing a brick campaign to kind of further enhance the space. I think we'll have a little wiggle room there. Kathy, I really appreciate your feedback. I guess the question to you when you say about design, I feel like just, is it okay if I weigh in? I think everybody's talking.
Yeah, no, I was just saying what I was hearing. I haven't been to the last
and I get it. And
traveling.
I guess I heard, I guess we're not done finally, and we weren't done finally when we came to the commission. I think when we did McGuan. What we're trying to do here is to get nailed down if we want one of these structures, right? And that the other pieces surrounding the structure would be pieces that would then complement whatever the main structure is. And I guess from what I heard was that people like the X-Gen, like the structure itself, but they're not in agreement with everything around it, including like if there should be more amenities and making, even Sarah said, more options for kids on the ground. So everybody's not like, oh, we have to go up to that tower if they don't feel like it, or if it's not appropriate. So I looked at, just looking, for Patty and Sarah, I had them down as start over, do other things, like not interested in either one of these structures in theory, right? And then I had Ruth was headed towards mega tower. I know she's driving, or she probably could be of that camp too. So that's Sarah and Patty. So that's 3 of them. But then when I looked at who liked the X-Gen, I had Curtis. I'm sorry if I'm calling you guys out. So don't, and if it's different, feel free to interrupt too. Alyssa seemed like she liked it. Jean seemed like she was okay with the difference. And Pam Garrity. And I guess I would put myself in the camp of something different, wanting something like that. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people out of the committee. So to me, if we are using the committee as our way of going forward on this, there seems to be a majority of sorts to me. But again, I'm not wedded to finishing this, whatever, I'm not trying to push one agenda over the other. I've just been a part of the process of seeing how much there has been time put on this. If you look at the Google Doc and how many iterations of different things we've done, this Google Doc was put together a long time ago and had all the different designs. We've looked at, 4 or 5 different companies, Pam. They gave us very different things. And then the committee narrowed it down to, we want something different. And, we got something different. And now the biggest hurdle that I'm hearing is that people don't like how big it is, how it fits in the space. There was also like how the top, the younger generation would be using this potential playground on the 5 to 12. So I don't know. I guess I saw it differently, but I respect your opinion. But I don't feel like it's we have to start over thing.
I don't think it's starting over. I think it's changing it. So I don't think anyone wants to start over, but maybe Sarah, you disagree with me. If you do, then go ahead. I don't care. I'm a lawyer. Everyone disagrees with me all the time.
No, I think what you said is exactly how at least I feel. I'm sure Patty feels. And I just think we can't even get an agreement on this committee. Like we can't get a majority. Like I just.
But we do have a majority.
Can I add something?
Sorry, we can't get. Yeah.
Go ahead, Ruth. Go ahead. Jump in.
Sorry. I was reviewing a bunch of the notes too, because I like everyone and I appreciated everyone's feedback because I'm like Alyssa, like it's a very hard decision that I'm truly trying to look at in all eyes. But one thing that I noticed was the 2 companies got ruled out pretty early on that we kind of liked as a group. I went back to the notes and it said that we wanted one of them, but that they weren't responsive or they were harder to work with. So we eliminated 2 companies right off the bat. Unfortunately, that was the one when I was away out of the country, so I didn't see those presentations. But I feel like when I came back from my trip, all of a sudden it was John's design with this Extreme Gen, and it felt like it was just like one or the other. Like I just feel like if we could tweak something, I think we would all really be happy. But I feel like to go from this one extreme and then we have to make that one fit is where I'm feeling a little more defensive. Whereas I feel like if there was just a little bit more wiggle room with like extreme, like I don't know, I just felt like it was like when I came back, it was like, oh, this is the new design and this is the company we have to go with because the other 2 weren't responding.
Well, I guess Ruth, why that happened was Pam went back to, I guess the one design was the Emmy O'Brien one because that was so novel, it was so different, and people looked at the video and then said, this is awesome. And we worked with Emmy O'Brien for Playground by the Sound, and when we worked with them, it was easier to work with them, but Pam struggled. And part of the problem with dealing with these playground companies is that if we can't have them help us when we're on the front end of the sales, what I call the kind of the dating phase, the reality is that going forward, it'll be really hard to get any information from them and any of this work product that we're talking about. I mean, honestly, there's a huge difference. And I personally really like the Emmy O'Brien, but I couldn't put us in a position where we weren't going to be, we would be choosing a product that maybe we really liked, which was great. Maybe we would still be in a design phase if they weren't responsive, but that in the end, we would have the playground offline for a longer period of time. Like, as everybody said several times, this is our busiest playground. We can't have it down for 6 months. I mean, we could talk about during timeline, how long the idea would take, but that's the thought. But honestly, I'm not trying to rush you guys. I'm just trying to say, hey, I want to go back to the commission and say, this is where we're at in terms of, I'm happy to report, what happened here, as about where we are as a committee, and then have them weigh in too. But the reality is that right now about six people like the design, and maybe we are not in full agreement with what is surrounding it at this point, because that's why we have the committee, and we work on it with colors, whatever. That's it. But I'm not sure, like, there's a couple of people, and we listened to it. You guys are really good about putting it in the Google Doc. Everything's there, but everybody has had a share in speaking their minds. I feel like Patty, you're looking like you don't agree about that. And I feel like there was ample opportunity to feedback. So go ahead, Patty.
Thank you for unmuting me. We're all trying to work for the same project, Susan. We're all working for this together. I don't agree with your numbers. I don't agree with your numbers. Alyssa definitely talked at length about trying to find something that was smaller that fit the landscape. And so if given the opportunity to change things up a bit, she was definitely I don't want to say it's camps, because we're all working together on that. But I mean, it's Ruth and Sarah and Alyssa and myself definitely gave feedback on this item. And the whole thing is, again, it feels like the cut and paste that he gave us. And first of all, I want to say I like John. I'm not trying to go away from him at all. I know how we respect the work that he did with us at McGuan. And if he works well with Pam, that is really, really important, right? Because she's the one having to deal with all this. But with all due respect to Curtis and Jean, they did not go up there. Jean is brand new. I know Curtis is working. It's hard to get up there to see just how big that footprint is. I know Pam went up there twice. Garrity, appreciate that. Pam Geary doesn't have a vote with regards to what would be this committee, but she does all the hard work and she gets all the accolades for bringing these great vendors to us. What I'm saying is, Susan, please listen to what we're saying, because I think that Kathy said it best. We're not there yet, which is what I was trying to say. And I think some of the rest of us were saying, we're not there yet. And so there might be another option besides the extreme towers. Everybody likes what's down below. They like the Phoenix on the side. They like the swings. We might not have, that catalog is massive if you've gone through it. It's massive. There might be other opportunities. And I just feel like he gave us the extreme one and he gave us the mega towers. So please, I'm asking that you give us more time to do more of our homework. Yes, we've been working on it, but we are all really, really more deep diving recently when we've been able to see it. And after McGuan, I think it's important to really see every single item that we're going to be putting on the playground. And that's it. I'm just saying that I think that we're not trying to choose one or the other. I would recommend that we've zeroed in on a lot of things we like, and let's just keep working till we get it right. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to jump in to say I agree. I have like a quarter of a vote in this entire process because I am so late in the game. From my understanding, it seems like this is the vendor that we're proceeding with. I wasn't sure at this point in time how much change we were allowed to make. I believe that there's some sort of expiration in terms of the price quote that we were given. So at this point, I just wasn't sure like how much more we could explore. Because I also didn't want to derail the progress and start from scratch. Sure. And so I'm like a quarter of a vote, if anything, if there's a camp to be involved in. To your point, I was not there. I completely understand that concern as well. So, but if given the opportunity to look for other options within the same company, that's definitely something I'm more than willing to help explore. I just wasn't sure from the timeline perspective or possibility.
Thanks, Jane.
We were able to do that.
I just feel like what we can do is I'm gonna report back to the commission what happened. I won't even say it's a vote. I'll tell them where we're at. I mean, which is what I can do, and we'll go from there. I feel like that's the best way to go, and I'll get some feedback from them of what their thoughts are. I mean, it sounds like there's still too much disagreement here, and that's where we will be. Why don't I swing to timeline so then we can kind of work our way backwards in terms of what. Oh, go ahead, Pam Garrity.
Sorry, there was another, I just wanted to mention that I know that the big change is difficult. And frankly, my kids would just be happy with anything that is new because Cherry Lawn is stale. We do a lot of homeschool meetup groups for this age group. And when it's at Cherry Lawn, and by the way, you guys, I live on Brookside. Okay. So I am like, Cherry Lawn is my go-to because it is on my street. My kids don't want to go. So they're like, it's not hard enough. It's not good enough. So anything that we change it to will be an improvement. So that just because my kids loved the X Gen doesn't mean that I'm married to it, but I'm delighted to do it if that's a thing. But I also wanted to echo what Curtis said was the topography and the setup of this particular playground. Like you're not going to see it from the road. So it's a good setup to do something more funky. And I was, of course, my favorite thing was the spiky, what was that? Emmy O'Brien. That was my go-to right off the bat in the beginning. But I think that bigger and different and wacky and the wow factor to me is like the most important because that's what I think kids respond to, at least mine. And if your kid isn't a playground kid, he's never going to be a playground kid no matter what you put there. And if your kid is a playground kid, they're probably going to like whatever you put there. So we just have to keep that in mind. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Pam, for that feedback. So I think that since I'm sensing a lot of disagreement at this point and people going this and that way. My plan is to report to the commission, where we're at. And then I'm gonna ask Pam to talk to John about if we have another option, if that's what people want. But the idea is that I know Patty has mentioned about this timeline thing, but the reality is that it takes a lot longer than that. I mean, by not doing something at this year end, we'll have 6%. It'll cost 6% more to anything we do on any playground structure, because every year the way it works is these playground companies they increase their price, but I don't know what it's called, but it's almost like I guess the cost of living for playgrounds. And so 6%. So it's okay. I just wanted people to know that if we don't decide, but I'm okay with waiting and slowing things down if people want. And if that's the case, we should also then have to work in tandem with Baker at some point if we slow it down too much, just as an FYI. But let me talk to Pam about what we can do, and I'll talk to the commission and get back to you guys. But I think if we have the expectation we might be able to do it this year, we can do meetings every week, which is fine with me. I've always mentioned that. I have a little more flexibility, but I do want it, if we can get the 6% savings to do another. That's the difference between we talked about adding more things that would be a good way to keep whatever add-ons we have, but we may very well lose some stuff too. So anyway, that's where I am. John said that we looked at the timeline. The project itself will take about probably 2 months from start to finish, I think, right? Is that accurate, Pam? I mean, just to be realistic, because we're asking them to rip up 2 playgrounds, create that kind of middle patio area. So if that's the consideration, he had said, keep that in mind, and then that spring or summer can happen, like late summer. So either way, we're inconveniencing, because this is a very well-used park, as you know. So is there any like preference for people when they would like to see that happen? I mean, Pam, I mean, anybody that uses the park regularly? I mean, there's trade-offs to both, obviously. But that's assuming that he told us even in October that that's assuming that they have availability, that they might not have time, you know, because they have a queue they form when people start putting the deposits down. So it might be a very well, even with that, making our decision now at 2024, 25 projects. So any thoughts on that?
Well, I just want to say too, I mean, I've been patiently listening, and
sorry, Pam.
it does sound to me that if we were to be able to accommodate some additional things around the X-Gen, that sounds to me like the majority right here wants to go with the X-Gen with just some additional things. And to me, that's great. If we can move forward with that thought process, and knowing that, and I did mention to Kate that there is additional ARPA money. If we can reach out about that ARPA money, and we were able to get an additional 50 to put some additional things around there, for whether it's 88 panels or that it talks about the patio in between both. That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing there's definitely some hesitation about not wanting the public to lash out, but guess what? The public may not lash out. They might be like, wow, that's fantastic. So you kind of got to change the mindset too about putting in something. But I'm with Pam. You know, I'm with the nature that there's that wow factor. I have kids too. My kids would love the wow factor. But I think if we look at things around the unit, I think we all can have what we're looking for. Go ahead, Pam.
Quick question. So I know that we talked about keeping that round, whirly round globe. I mean, to me, we could keep it or don't keep it. It doesn't mean anything. But if it meant the space, if that space is more valuable with some like awesome ramp thing or just a more awesome feature, let's nix the globe. If money is no object. But I'm all for that. I mean, I know everybody has said we would keep it, or if we have to shift the swings, or even make the swings 2 swings less. So my kids, I find, and I've noticed this, especially up at Orange, the handicap accessible swings are the ones that are used the most. The typical swings that every playground have. I don't know if it's just because every single playground has one. They're just not as, like, we have them in our backyard. Like it's just not as popular. So maybe instead of being like a 6 swing, you know, with the 2 handicap and the 4 regulars, maybe we go 2 regular and 2 handicap, shift it down, and then we can add more of those cool extra, you know, the bench that moves out, or whatever, those zillion options in the catalog, and get rid of the whirly globe that is so difficult to use. But I don't know, maybe that's a great compromise. I like what you just said, Pam. Thanks.
Yeah, I do think that, you know, I definitely hear some negative things about the globe. However, when I'm there and I visit it, climbing all over it. It is a
they are all over it.
It's a climber. It's just the fact
my kids like it too.
You're expecting it to move. But
Fast.
a climber typically doesn't move. This one moves. I saw a little kid spinning it. Now it's not fast, but your typical climber doesn't necessarily move. So I go back and forth with it because there's a lot of kids that climb all over it.
I do too, but I think with that new moon, I'm very excited about that
yeah, me too.
crescent climber thing. I don't even need to see that in person. It looks awesome.
Yeah.
But with that as maybe the compensation, I don't know. I'm just trying to kick around some ideas to enhance the floor space that is currently there.
I do believe, and I'm an optimistic person. I believe that we can gain some more space, but it might be that we have to budget down the road our capital improvement budget for additional space and different things that go in it, because there's grass toward the basketball court that we could move into if we wanted to put a different panels or spaces there. But we could increase that foot space. I just don't know that it's within this budget.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's another item that, because I also heard several of Ruth and Alyssa and Sarah all say, yeah, their kids went up. They weren't afraid of the safety on the tower because it's enclosed. But then they went up, they went through it, and they were bored. I heard Pam Garrity say her kids did it multiple times. So I heard both things, but I know that it, you know, when I was there, it was mainly a lot of toddlers. I know we have tons of younger kids at Cherry Lawn. So I'm just wondering if there's a way we can be reducing the cost by, it's almost like if we could have the whole bottom half of the extreme and then just something, and that allows us to add on some of these unique items like the Ninja and the other stuff we're talking about. And then I don't know, is there something else that can go above that maybe isn't just as high as 28 feet, even though I know we're talking about bringing it down by 3 feet, that reduce the costs? Like, I know it's hard. We don't know, Pam, like what the exact, they don't break it out by tower. You know, they might break it out by item. But that's where I feel like I know when I get off this call later on tonight, I'm going to go back into his catalog and really, really look at stuff and see if there's a hybrid, you know, if there's just something else, because I'm thinking about costs and I'm listening to what the parents of the end users of all the kids are saying. So that's my two cents. Thanks.
Okay. So I think we did touch on the timeline a little bit, and it sounds like I didn't hear anybody really speak to it, but you guys know now what we're kind of.
Oh, quick comment about the timeline. A quick timeline about the time. The quick comment about the timeline. I don't think there's any good time to close a park for 2 months. You just get in the queue, you bite down and go for it. I think there's never a good answer for that one. So I think that's out of our hands.
Yeah, I'm just,
in my opinion.
I mean, I guess we're going to go to John and see what we end up with. But my hope is that we have something like we are all pretty much comfortable with before the end of the year. So we get to save 6%. That's going to be a challenge. But you're right, Pam. Never a great time to shut down a playground. I mean, and in deep winter when we could do it, it's too cold and it's freezing and they can't break ground. But I think the thing that makes me really happy is that John's going to do everything. He's already told us that they have identified someone that will take pieces and export it for underserved country. So that, to me, that's been one of our goals as a committee, is make sure it would be great to be sustainable, have someone, and it wouldn't be no inconvenience to us because he's taking it on and it's part of his timeline. So we don't have to worry about, a separate guy coming in to take it and use it. So that's awesome. But anyway, let's, Pam and I will talk, and, it sounds like we could even just look at this video, and I took a bunch of notes. We'll see what John can come up with, because he seems to be super responsive. He happens to be away these last few days, which is why our plan was a little bit not as robust. I mean, we asked him to turn something around in 4 days, and I could see now that it's harder than it looks. But I'm going to report to the commission on, what happened today at this meeting, just because I feel like it's good for them to hear where we are at, and see if they have any thoughts or, too, because at the end of the day, they're kind of making the decisions. So I want to make sure that they're comfortable with the way we're headed, and get their feedback. So I'm going to close this meeting now. Thank you everybody who's left for your time. I always appreciate it. Have a great day.